I mean, I didn't grow up in the church. I wasn't born into anything. My parents didn't start attending church until their friends invited them. So from 4th, 5th grade, that's when I started attending church. But it really wasn't until 7th grade for me when that moment of encountering Jesus really happened. We always like to think that following Jesus would mean that things get easier, but it's anything but easy. If anything, it probably gets harder. I've been playing violin since I was 6 years old. Like many Asian kids, you were given two choices, right? You either learn violin or you learn piano. And so I chose violin. And getting past the initial pains of, oh, I gotta practice, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But it became something I really enjoyed when it got to the point where I was second chair and only for the first chair who had to play a Vivaldi solo for a competition. When his grades disqualified him from being able to do the solo, well, guess who had to play the solo and had to learn it? But that didn't mean that the former first chair wasn't in class anymore. And so I had to endure his glares. I had to endure his provocations, his gossiping, the things he was saying about me behind his back. And all the while, I was being bullied outside of class as well. Being bullied for my ethnicity, being bullied for who I was. And I think those are pressures, those are stresses that I didn't know how to handle. Every former teenager and present teenager can admit that they've said, you don't understand. And I think very much so whenever I tried to tell my parents, tell my friends, I just felt like they didn't understand. After the end of a school week, my church had youth group. And so I showed up as I had always done. But this time, the youth director, he had set up a big giant cross in front of the stage. Every student was handed a bandage and a pen to write the initials down of the people who we felt had hurt us. And once we had done so, to take the bandage and place it on the cross, stick it on the cross. And so I wrote down the initials of those classmates that had really, really hurt me with their words, with what they had been saying about me. Stuck it on the cross, and that was probably the first time in my life it began to make sense. What does it mean to believe in the gospel, believe in Jesus, believe in what is good news? There was also little rocks scattered all across the stage as well. And so we were also instructed to, once we stuck the bandage on the giant wooden cross, to pick up a rock as well, as a reminder of, well, who is our rock? Who is the one that we can rely on, we can stand on? I still have that rock to this day. It is still a reminder to me of who it is, no matter what highs and lows, no matter what circumstances I face, who it is I can stand on, who it is that is solid ground, who it is that I can trust my entire life to. And that night is when the first time in my life I made that decision. I chose to accept Christ. We always like to think that following Jesus would mean that things get easier. But any person who chooses to follow Christ knows it's anything but easy. If anything, it probably gets harder, right? And that was certainly the case. My problems did not just resolve itself overnight. The answers did not just suddenly come to me because I said, I believe you, Jesus. I trust in you. I give you my life. And I think over the years for me, following Jesus, even though I had accepted him, never really came into focus. I still attended youth group. I still participated in the activities of the church. But I never understood the why. Why do we do these things? Until my senior year of high school. I made a decision to apply to my youth group servant team, even though my participation was pretty nominal up until that point. And from that point forward, that subsequent year was so different, so different. It was the first time I experienced what it meant to actually belong to a group, belong to be held accountable, be cared for, be loved by fellow believers, and then also being in a position to serve. It was the first time I began to learn what does it mean to be a servant leader. And my parents disapproved. They didn't like it that I was doing this. They were always asking me, why are you spending every weekend at church? You're spending every Friday at youth group, every Saturday at youth group, every Sunday at church. You should be focusing on applying to colleges. You should be focusing on getting your GPA up. You should be focusing on those things that are relevant to your future. I think that when I look back at that year, I also got to see how it was the first time that my parents changed their mind about what I was doing. When they got to see the fruit that came out of me being in that position. And yeah, that was the first time in my life I really felt like I understood what does it mean to have a calling? What does it mean to find your God-given purpose and not just the purposes that the world would have you pursue and chase after? That I actually felt like for the first time my life had meaning, had direction. By the time I graduated high school, I had 3 things that I believed that no matter what would happen, God would fulfill. I get into the college of my choice. I would make all-state violin every single year, and that the girl I'd known since childhood we'd be dating. And God, in His incredible and great mercy, did not give me any of those things. In fact, He systematically took apart every single one of those wishes and dreams to the point that I felt pretty hopeless. And so when I entered college, I found myself in a situation where I was somewhere I didn't want to be. I was with people who I did not want to be with. And I had a purpose that I felt like did not match where I felt like everything had added up to at that point. I thought as a freshman, I would no longer be asked to serve. I thought the college I was going to was just temporary, that I was going to transfer to where I do want to go. And then lastly, that then I will find my purpose. Then I'll figure things out. But in that year, God really allowed the space for so much work and change to happen, transformation to happen. God was so gracious to give me people who were very much not like me. Though we were from so many different backgrounds and ethnicities, we found commonality in worshiping and serving Christ together. And so I found community that way. I felt like I found a place where I enjoyed being at, even though initially it wasn't anywhere I wanted to be. And then ultimately, too, that because of those things, I found purpose. I found purpose in what I was doing. And so even though I did transfer to where I did want to go, I did transfer to the University of Texas at Austin, I'm so grateful for that freshman year I spent at UT San Antonio for surrendering my assumptions, to not assume we have all the answers, to not assume that even God will just give us all the answers. But it certainly isn't happily ever after when I transferred to UT Austin. All the friends that were there had made new relationships. They had figured out what it looked like after their first year for them to find that people, place, and purpose. And so I was walking into circumstances where I felt like I was being left out. I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't fit in. I'd always thought that those things are only things that happen when you're in middle school and high school, and then you just kind of grow out of those things. But lo and behold, I was still feeling those exact same feelings and wondering what is going on. This isn't fair. And feeling the same feelings I had felt again of, I don't want to be here. Why am I even here? Why is this happening? And even in the midst of that adversity I was encountering, He provided. I had signed on to be a small group leader for my campus ministry, even though I didn't know anybody. And God gave me a group of young men who encouraged me, who cared for me. We grew close together as brothers in Christ. And it's from the fruit of the community we built together that really began my desire to continue seeing that fruit being born in my life. All the while, I was still trying to make sense of what does the future hold for me? And something that one of my disciplers really confronted me with was a question he had confronted himself with. What would bring God the most glory in the next 5 years? And when I asked myself that, I reflected upon how God had made me, the experiences God had given me. I came to the realization that God was calling me to ministry. And so I did what I could to go after that. In my last year in college, I decided I'm going to apply to be campus staff with the university. That's what I'm going to do. Only to find out that I didn't get it. So now what do? I'm trying to navigate at the same time transitioning from college to figuring out what does it mean to be an adult. I'm trying to redefine what community looks like. I'm trying to navigate all these different expectations and pressures. I'm not aligning myself with what I felt like God was calling me to anymore. I just felt lost. I felt so lost. Why is everyone else getting what they want, but not me? I'm thankful that on the advice of friends, I went to therapy. I don't think I would have ever been able to find a way out of what I was feeling without it. A family friend offered me the chance to interview as an accountant. I graduated college with a degree in political science, and I got a job offer. My schedule was brutal, and every day at work, I had a very verbally abusive manager, and all I could do was take those abuses every single day. And that was it, Monday through Friday. Every weekend, I'd have a friend who would text me and say, hey, come out to small group, come out to church. And every single weekend, I would ghost him. I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't reply back at all. I was just so exhausted, really feeling so hopeless. I would remember sitting in my cubicle a lot of days, being so angry at God, because I could see so clearly the juxtaposition of my life compared to my peers' lives. Why am I here? How did I get so far away from where I felt like God had been calling me to? And upon being accused of things that were just not true, and at that point I realized the only way forward is out. I had to leave. There was no fixing this situation. There was no making the best of this. When I quit that job, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had let that job rob me of everything, my identity and my joy. In the conversation I had with my pastor, he laid out for me, David, you are like a bungee cord. That is the pattern of your life. You keep being stretched and stretched and stretched. You keep trying to go wander and pull yourself away from what God wants for you, only to get snapped back to reality over and over and over. I pushed back. I disagreed with him, to which he lost his temper and said, David, I don't give a damn about what you do. My pastor, who I'd known since high school, said that to me. When I left that first job, my parents had offered me the opportunity to fly out to Shanghai and spend time with them. And so I was debating whether I wanted to do that. When my pastor said that, that's when I made up my mind. I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. And so I did that. I flew out to Shanghai, stayed with my parents, took on a new job through my dad's company. My dad was working for Autodesk at the time, and I signed on to be a UI UX designer. But here I was, yet in another situation that felt just so distant from where God had called me to be. I attended my parents' house church during that time, and one of the elders invited me out to a trip he was taking into southern China. And those 4 days, I'll never forget it. What I got to see, what I got to witness. But upon going out to Changsha, the first place this elder and I stopped at was this house church that had started with just 10 people and over the course of a few months exploded to 100. And spending time with this congregation was, it was so humbling to see the fire that they had. I was so inspired by their faith. I was so inspired by how closely and intimately they were walking with the Lord. I mean, at the time, I was still very broken. I was a very broken man, still searching for identity, still searching for belonging, still searching for purpose. With how explosive their growth had been, they were having difficulty multiplying into more small groups. And as someone who had been training and equipping small group leaders throughout college, it just felt so fitting to be at that place in time to offer my experiences, to help them, to encourage them. When we think about what is God's calling, it's really 3 things. Ability, are you good at it? Are you capable of it? Affinity, do you care about it? Does it give you joy? Is it fulfilling? Lastly, opportunity, is there need? And that trip was the first time in a long while that I had experienced the convergence of those 3 things, of those kind of 3 factors, in me rediscovering God's call on my life. So I spent 6 months in Shanghai. The strategy, the plan then my dad and I had formulated was that I spent 6 months there and then move back to the United States and try to use my work experience in Shanghai to parlay that into another job and then go from there. And where better to kind of parlay for a job in tech than to go to the San Francisco Bay Area, right? But that's what I did. I spent 6 months trying to make all of that work. Upon going home for Christmas that year, my parents gave me an ultimatum. They said, you have 10 days to find a job, get something going, anything, or else you will interview with another family friend for this job back home in Houston. Remember, that is where I swore I'd never want to go back. I never want to go back. This job was for a executive assistant position with a bank. Got an offer. Once again, I got an offer. As a 28-year-old, I was pulled back to the last place in the world I wanted to be, kicking and screaming, throwing a temper tantrum. But upon returning home, what I thought was the worst place and situation possible, God provided in ways I could have never expected. I found community again. I found belonging. I reconnected with friends who held nothing against me. Even if I ignored all of them, I had pushed all of them out of my life. They loved me as if I had never left. A church aunt asks me, hey, do you want to serve in one of our youth small groups over this summer? Okay, fine, I'll do it. It's only for a summer, it's only temporary, right? All the things that I thought I had agreed to, I had committed to that were temporary became a lot more permanent than I had ever intended. I was seeing fruit in my ministry again. This got the attention of the pastors of my church. They sat me down and said, David, you're working a 40-hour work week and you're doing 20 hours of ministry. Have you considered going into full-time ministry, going into vocational ministry? And when I began working for my home church as an English ministry administrator, also entrusted with the responsibility of directing our church's college ministry, did all of the experiences, everything I had been through in a proverbial wilderness come into focus, began to make sense. I had been an oil and gas accountant, a UI UX designer, a freelancer, a bank executive assistant, and I needed to go through all of that because God was preparing me. God was preparing me for the ministry He had for me. It was not a waste at all. It was not wasted time at all. It was not purposeless, aimless at all. The wonderful thing about that period of time in my 20s is that while I was angry at God, I was angry at Him. I was telling Him how angry I was at Him. Without even realizing it, I was still in relationship with Him. I was still talking to Him. I was still telling Him what I felt, how frustrated I was. Finding your calling involves positioning yourself in a state of thankfulness. Thankful to God for everything He has given us. Nothing is earned. Everything is given. And when we realize that, that's when our hearts and our minds and our hearts can be opened to seeing the people, the places, the purposes, the plan that God has for our lives. We like to think that God's plans for us are linear. It'd be great, it'd be so much easier if it was. God's calling for us is not linear. It's messy, it's complicated. It often doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up, the math doesn't work out. But I want to assure anyone who feels lost, who feels broken, who feels ashamed, who feels like they don't have their life together, my encouragement is don't give up on Him. Don't stop trusting Him. And so as I am sitting here now, really trying to figure out once again, what's next for my life, I want to see more and more people experience the kind of fruit I have. To see how crucial it is for the next generation of believers to have older, wiser, more seasoned followers of Jesus journey with them. Because I'm thankful for those people in my life who did that for me. For my parents, for my peers, for the very promises of God that held me together. I want to see more and more young people experience that. And to see that the church is committed, invested in journeying with our young people, no matter where God leads them, no matter where God takes them. My name is David Perng, and this is my story of how I found God's calling on my life.